can I live this out? That I will love everyone as you have loved me. That means people that don't agree with me, people who don't like me. I have to love them as Jesus. And being so far from home, you kind of get away from all of the noise. And you really have some really quality, quiet time. And it really simplifies your life to the point when you come home, you begin to say, why do we live such complex lives? We really could do some things to simplify some things in our life. Walking into cities, towns, dark, light, it feels very safe, welcoming. If you do make the wrong turn, the locals are very quick to help you get back on the path. Just meeting people was a joy, meeting people you would never have met. I met a lot of people. I had a wonderful experiences with the Lord and with people. Again, it's hard to just find the language, but it was very, very exciting to know you accomplished something that no one will ever be able to take away from you. The physical challenge is wonderful. The mental and spiritual challenge of keep going and it just is kind of almost indescribable, but joy probably is the closest. It was just exhilarating nearly every day that here I am, I'm moving along.
Hello, Pilgrims. This is your host, Efrain, from the Way to Your White podcast. We are here in another episode of our podcast where we have a special guest. His name is Ron Blake, and he's retired. He used to live in Indianapolis, in Indiana, and he moved to Florida, Sarasota, in 2022. His wife was diagnosed with cancer, and she was moved with him to Sarasota. And since 2022, he's been retired. And I just met him because he was walking the Camino Francés, and my wife was doing that as well. And they just encountered at the beginning of that Camino, but we're going to be talking about that in this episode. So welcome, Ron. How are you doing today?
Welcome. I'm doing very fine, Efrain. It's good to meet you.
Okay, thank you. So the first question that I have for you, when you decided to walk this Camino, what made you to take that decision?
Well, the funny thing is, probably 3 years ago, I don't know that I'd ever heard of it. I was reading a book and someone talked about taking a sabbatical and walking the Camino. So I began to kind of investigate what that was. In 2018, I kind of went on a little bit of a health journey and lost some weight, and walking was a part of that, not to the extent the Camino is. But after you retire, you need to kind of continue to set goals. So I thought, well, I'm going to set a goal to walk the Camino, and kind of broke it down in my mind of the training. And my wife said, yes, why don't you go? So I just decided to give it a try and to go. And so I worked with a company and away I went.
Okay, then. Well, when you're starting walking that Camino, well, the first question is going to be, why do you think that it takes so long from the time that you actually start looking information about the Camino and the time that actually you walk the Camino?
Well, all of my life, Efrain, I have been a person, if I'm going to do something, I really investigate, research, kind of break it down. Is this doable? How will I get there? And so I probably started in April a year before, and I made some certain things that I was going to need to do to make myself feel comfortable about it, as well as my wife being that far away. Okay. And one of them was I was going to use a company. And I turned 69 the week before I started the Camino. And so I just kind of thought, if I'm going to be able to do that amount of walking over that amount of time, I have to get a good night's rest. And therefore I committed to doing the private room, and so I looked at companies. I wished I'd have known about your company in those days. Okay. But I didn't. So I did that, and I had a duffel bag that I had transported ahead. I wore a backpack, obviously, on the trail. So I kind of made those allowances of what I would do. My days of living in a dorm or sleeping in a dormitory are way back in my rearview mirror. I did not want that experience. I felt like sleep was going to be a pretty important factor at the end of a hard day. And I really discovered, Efrain, that the restorative power of sleep. There were nights when I went to bed, I didn't know if I could get out of bed the next day. And after a good night's sleep, you get up and you're ready to go. So I'm pleased with the decisions that I made leading up to it. I practiced, I researched what kind of shoes to wear, lots of things. And most of those things worked out, pretty well. You can't figure everything out ahead of time, but I feel like I really made some good choices about equipment and things. So I'm pretty pleased with the way it went. And it's just not something you can get off your couch today and go tomorrow. There's a lot of planning that goes into it.
Yeah. And what kind of preparation do you did in the physical aspect
Correct.
before going there?
Well, I kind of was listening to podcasts and reading books, so I knew I had to get my mileage up, and not just like once every so often, but I have a route here. I live 4 miles from Anna Maria Island in the Gulf of Mexico. I'm on the Gulf side of Florida. And
Okay.
so going out of my subdivision up to the main road that goes to the island, out to the island, all the way down the island and back up and back to my house is a 24-kilometer, almost 15-mile walk. And
Okay.
so that's how I started. Now, and I got to where I could do that. I don't know that easily is the word, but it was comfortable. Now, the downside of all that, which we will probably talk about, I live at 180 feet above sea level, so it's pretty flat. So it was difficult to replicate mountains. But as far as stamina and doing that, and then it became a psychological game. At times I would look at the app that I was using on the Camino, and I would see I had 20 kilometers to go. And I would say, you have often walked 25 kilometers at home. You can do this. So that's sort of the trend. I went to the gym and tried to get the treadmill on as steep an angle as I could. And going to visit my son in Sarasota, I would walk the parking garages up and down. But
Okay.
that still doesn't prepare you for the Pyrenees mountains.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so now you already flew to Spain,
Yes.
and how do you get? What airport do you arrive in, or you arrive directly in
I
France?
Yeah, no, I flew from here to Atlanta, Atlanta to Paris, Paris to Biarritz in France, and then transported from Biarritz to Saint Jean.
Okay. So then, when you start and you say, "Well, I'm ready. Tomorrow is my first day of work." So I imagine that you wake up just very emotional, and this is the first day. But how was once you started walking?
You know, I started, as you know, it's getting it. It was I started August 26th, so I got up early because I wanted to get a good start. So it was somewhat dark. I had the headlamp, but I only needed it a little while. I was having a little trouble getting my trekking poles adjusted, and a couple of young men saw me from Seattle, Washington, and stopped and helped me and showed me a couple of little tricks. And so as I began, I knew it was going to be a severe incline going up, but I had no idea. There was nothing that really physically or mentally prepared me for how steep it really truly is. But folks were helpful. And the day I started was a misty, very foggy
Okay.
day. I remember folks telling me it's going to be hard getting up to the top of the Pyrenees, but when you get there, the vistas and the views will be so magnificent you'll forget about how much you hurt. The problem was when I got up there, you couldn't see more than 4 or 5 feet in front of you. So I
Okay.
really didn't get to see the vistas. And I think, Efrain, what really became a challenge was not just the cardio workout, but the one thing I had not factored, and I don't know how I could have, was the altitude to go from 180 feet to 5,000 feet. There were times as I was walking up there, not only was I under cardio stress, I was getting lightheaded a little bit because of the altitude, and it became a very, very long day because it became a longer trip because I had to step aside and rest and sit and
Okay.
some of those things. But God sent me three wonderful Camino angels that day that really, in their own each unique way, helped me get across and get to Roncesvalles that evening.
Okay. So once you get start going down to Rosenvalles, so and when you finally arrive to that hotel, how do you feel it at that moment?
Oh, I told Maria, and then there was a young man from Germany and his red Labrador Retriever. We were kind of walking together at this time, not only over the mountain but going down, which is really quite strenuous with those sharp rocks, and you're walking down. And I announced to Maria and Jan, if we survive and get to Roncesvalles, I'm going to buy you dinner. So I bought them all dinner, and it's really hard to put into language. I think it took me 12 or 13 hours from the time I started till I
Okay.
got to my motel room. But you have to add in, I also sat and visited and ate dinner with my friends. But even sitting there eating dinner is such a sense of accomplishment for someone like me who's not an athlete, has never been an athlete. And I would have to say it's one of the hardest physical things I've ever done in my life. But the joy and the exhilaration I felt that evening, both at dinner and as I got back to my room, there haven't been too many times in my life I felt that kind of sense of I really accomplished something that was hard.
Okay. Well, that's really good. And then, so I imagine that day was one of the most difficult through your Camino, and I'm correct?
Yes, without question. There were other hard days, but that first day took hard to a different level.
Okay. Well, so then you walk, I believe, probably about 34, 35 more days after that one.
Yes, but I was when I started on August 26th till I got to Santiago on the 2nd was 38 days, and four of those were rest days. So
Okay.
really was probably 33, 34 days of walking.
Okay. So, and then, so once you get down to Rosensvalles, and do you have any idea how many people do you see through your whole Camino?
You know, it seems like a million because I talk to so many people. Uh, I would say a few hundred that I at least said Buen Camino to, and probably, boy, I should sit down. I've written down names of people I had longer conversations with, but I'm going
Okay.
to say well over 100 people that I had some sort of a conversation with.
Okay. And then my understanding is as well, because I just have walked the short Caminos. So, for
Yes,
example, the Frances, I have just walked from Sarria
right.
to Santiago. And you know that once you get to Sarria, there is a lot of pilgrims walking.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
how was that Camino from San Jean Pied de Port until Sarria?
Yeah, I guess that was now that you mention it, I've thought about it, but not a lot till you just said it. I think I visualized in my mind that there'd be a lot, I would have a lot more people that I would see before me and behind me. And I would say there were stretches where you could go an hour or two and not see a pilgrim, or maybe see one way off in the distance, or when you stopped to look back, you'd see two or three. Um, the ones early on seem to either be solo or in smaller groups. As you know, when you get to Saria, you have like field trips and big groups of college students. So there were a lot of folks, but there was always somebody to talk to. But it wasn't, in my opinion, and I have nothing else to base it on. It didn't feel crowded at all. Uh,
Yes.
it
Yeah,
there you
at the end it's crowded because you are approaching
yes,
to Santiago.
correct,
But when I explain to people when they ask about that, it's like if you are going, for example, I'm here in North Carolina. If
right,
we're driving to DC, we are gonna start finding traffic once we
right,
start
exactly,
approaching to DC.
exactly.
But prior to that, it's very difficult to have traffic. So it's kind of the
No,
same.
I think it's the same. You would see people, you would talk to people, but you could also go quite an hour or two without really seeing very many people, except when you went into towns and villages or stopped at
Yes.
coffee cafes or bars. There'd be people sitting there, but you had a lot of there was a lot of solitude on the trail as well.
Yes, and another side, I don't know if you are aware or not, but the Pilgrim office decided to make some changes on how
Right,
to get the Compostela. They're
right,
starting to be effective this year, about around May of 2025. And what they did is that in order to get the Compostela in the past, you needed to do at least the last 100 kilometers. So
right,
for someone that walked just a section of the beginning, even though that section is higher than 100, they do
right,
not get the Compostela in the past. Now, to try to descongest the last 100 kilometers, they change the requirement. So the requirement now is that you can walk, for example, from San Pied de Port, let's say, up to Pamplona is around 70 kilometers. So that's going to count, and you just need to complete 30
right.
of the last part, but not the
Yeah,
100.
yeah.
So it's going to take some time until that happens because this is just recently.
You're
But
right.
at some point, that's going to reduce the number of people that are going to the last part of the Camino.
Absolutely.
Yes. So, and then you were talking about cafes and restaurants and places to stop. How you feel in those places that you stop?
You know, it's one of the things that I really miss. Of course, in Florida, you can have more outside dining than you can in other parts of the U.S. longer. But I really enjoyed it for a couple of reasons. You're tired, and so the food tasted better, the coffee tasted better, and you really got to talk to people, both the people in the community and running the establishment as well as pilgrims. That's where I met a lot of pilgrims and then would see them going forward was in the cafe. I really enjoyed the coffee stops and the breast. And as you know, that's where you're going to have to use the restroom. So
Yes.
you have to make those stops count. And I thoroughly enjoyed them. They were wonderful.
Okay, and then what would you attribute? Most of people, when going to the Camino, they've been having different issues on life, or they may be trying to do a reset. There are too many reasons why a person walk the Camino. And but what I have experienced is that when you are in the Camino, you have so much joy that you are super, super happy.
Yes.
What would you attribute that?
I I feel that it really was exhilarating. I mean, it may be a chance of a lifetime for most people who live far away from it. But just to be able to see the creation, to be able to walk, and the one thing that I would really tell people is I was a solo trekker, though I wasn't by myself all the time, obviously. Um, I felt safe, comfortable, walking into cities, towns, dark, light. It feels very safe, welcoming. If you do make the wrong turn, the locals are very quick to help you get back on the path. Um, just meeting people was a joy, meeting people you would never have met. I think the three things that they talk about the Camino, I experienced them all over and over. The physical challenge is wonderful. Um, the mental and spiritual challenge of keep going and keep it just is kind of almost indescribable, but joy probably is the closest. It was just exhilarating nearly every day that here I am, I'm moving along. And sometimes when I'd look at a map and see how far I had gone since I started, even I couldn't believe that I'd walked that far. So it's just a joyous experience. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, you actually almost walk a whole country from east to west.
Yes.
Just a little bit until you get to the what is called the end of the war or the
All
Fisterra.
right. Right.
Just a little bit more, and you will be there as well. So
Yeah.
that's an amazing experience. And once you arrived to Santiago,
Yes.
what did you feel when you were in the Plaza Obradero?
There was a couple that were originally from Michigan, and there was a time I've lived in Michigan on two occasions, and I would run into them about every 2 or 3 days. And we happened to just, my day into Santiago, I hadn't seen anybody I knew until we got right past the Santiago de Compostela street sign as you're entering the town on your way to the square. And so we were able so we kind of played off each other's excitement. I took a picture of them in front of the cathedral. They took a picture of me. And so it was kind of nice to have somebody that, I mean, I don't really know them, but I knew who they were to just really celebrate. Again, it's almost like getting over the Pyrenees, but on steroids, that you actually have walked 500 miles. You've accomplished this. I got there uninjured. I wasn't sick. I met a lot of people. I had a wonderful experiences with the Lord and with people. So again, it's hard to just find the language, but it was very, very exciting to know you accomplished something that no one will ever be able to take away from you.
Okay, then I have another question. So, because you are a pastor and you have been
Yes.
talking with so many people, so what would you recommend for people that wanted is considered to walk the Camino, that go there because it's a good way to take out stress from your life? So, what would you say to those people?
Well, I think the walking does that. I think the spiritual component, your wife was insistent that I got into the Pilgrim Masses, and they were marvelous experiences. Perhaps one of my highest spiritual points in the trip, one of them, not the highest, but one of them was in in that Pilgrim Mass, and I think, oh, I got to remember, was it Burgos of Leon? We the the assistant to the priest was an English speaker. So he brought that was the first homily I heard in English. And then he would interpret what the priest was saying. And as we came forward, they gave us the blessing in our own native language. And then the priest prayed it in Spanish. Then the priest said it was interpreted that he's going to give each one of us a scripture in our own language. And he wants us to meditate on this scripture verse all the way to Santiago, but if you can't do it for that long, at least do it for the next couple of days. And so when I got mine, I opened it up. It was the Gospel of John, chapter 15, verse 12.
Okay.
Jesus saying, "This is my commandment. Love one another. Love as I have loved you." And Efrain, every day I kind of reflected on that. It's simple. We've all heard it. If you've been to church, you've heard that. But I'm thinking, okay, Lord, when I go home, how can I live this out that I will love everyone as you have loved me? That means people who don't agree with me, people who don't like me. I have to love them as Jesus. And it was such a moving experience. And I experienced that nearly in every pilgrim mass. And I'm not Catholic, but one of the highlights for me were the many pilgrim masses that I got into. And so I would say to anyone going, regardless of what church you're a part of, don't miss the pilgrim masses. The blessings and the things you hear there really are life-changing.
Yeah. And then have you heard about that? What people say that the Camino started once you return to your home?
Oh, yes. I think that is without I think it started when you walked out your front door and it continues when you walk back in. There's just so many wonderful lessons. One thing that you learn over those days is you live pretty simply. You get up, you get dressed, you start walking, you stop and eat, you come back in. I wash my clothes out by hand every day. You eat again, you go to bed early, and you get up and you do it again. And being so far from home, you kind of get away from all of the noise and you really have some really quality quiet time. And it really simplifies your life to the point when you come home, you begin to say, why do we live such complex lives? We really could do some things to simplify some things in our lives.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And what I've been telling people that since we started this the Camino Wonders is that sometimes we complicated so much our life, and
Yes.
solutions are so easy. And yes, there are hard things that happen as well. But what is important to everyone is that you try what you can do with your hands, and what
Yes.
is out of your hands, just make sure that you address that to the person that can provide a solution.
Yes.
And that's part actually of if you work. I've been working more than 30 something years, and I've been seeing on my teams that they sometimes stress out. And an
Yeah.
example I can put right now is that when the pandemic happened a few years ago.
Right.
So when that just happened, and in the work where I used to be at that time, I have a team about 5 people. So, and the next day when the company sent everybody home to work from home, they start asking me what is going to happen. So I'm going to be losing my job, and I'm going to be losing my
Right.
job. And the only thing that I was able to tell them, so I do not know right now, but as far as I know, nobody's going to be losing their job. We're going to continue working, and this is something that you don't need to worry right now, at least for this. You may worry
Yes.
about the pandemic, but for a
Right.
specific, no, you don't need to worry. And they were asking that for probably every week for about the next 7, 8 months. At the end, everybody lost their job, but 4 years later, you were worrying for something that you don't need to worry,
That's true.
and that made you more stress on yourself.
Yes. That's true.
Yes, and so sometimes we do, and when we need to resolve also a problem that, let's say, a quality problem, for example, and you try and let's say you don't get a payment from an invoice that the customer say the quality of the product that you provide me is no good. You still need to do something to me be able to pay.
Right.
As long as you follow with that customer, even if you're not getting the payment, that's perfectly fine because you're
Yes.
doing your part. And then you
Right.
can analyze with the quality department, whoever needs to be addressing that problem for them to take that solution. Sometimes people worry too much.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah, life is
Very.
very easy.
It is. It is.
Yes. So, what recommendation will you be giving to someone that doesn't know anything about the Camino? What would you say to that person?
Well, I am so pleased with the way that I had planned it with the company. I would recommend, unless somebody is a through hiker and loves all of that, but the Camino is more than a hike. There's emotional and spiritual components. I highly recommend you go with a company, and unless you like living in dormitories, or sleeping there, I would recommend you start with a company, and then I think you need to listen to podcasts, read books, get yourself ready. I can't think of any area of my life that wasn't touched spiritually, emotionally. I remember going up the mountain. What is that? Perdón, where the pilgrim, the metal statues of the pilgrims on top of the mountain. I was walking next to a lady who I didn't know and just started talking with her, and she was from Minnesota. I didn't know at the time she was a therapist, but she asked me a couple of questions, and I'm not a overly emotional person, but I recalled an event from my childhood of a man in my local church who helped me with something. And as I was walking up that steep mountain, telling her
Mhm.
that story, I just began to sob and cry as I remembered that story from 50 years ago. And so it was sort of cathartic and healing. Um, the conversations you have with people on a Camino are probably conversations you don't even ever have with your neighbors, but it's just, it stretches you, you grow, you listen to other people's stories. I think if you have any interest in going, you should explore
Okay.
going, and I would use a company like yours without question. It's just nice to know that when you're from us in America, 5,000 miles from home, that if I got into any kind of a jam or problem with a motel or transportation, I can pick up the phone and call someone like you. I kind of needed that kind of security, though I never had to use it.
Okay.
It was sort of nice to know that it was there. And I would say it's one of the reasons I went when I did. I knew I could walk. I felt like I could walk it today. I don't know what next year or the year after is going to hold, but go. You will never be the same, and you'll never be sorry if you go.
Yes. Well, thank you for saying that. And then so the other thing is that would you walk the Camino again?
I probably would. I've originally my son was going to join me in Pamplona and walk to Burgos with me, then fly back home, but he changed jobs and so I have thought about because I've told him now that you're on a vacation schedule at work, let's start doing a dad son trip. And I thought maybe the one that could fit in, Efrain, not everybody's retired and has 6, 7 weeks to dedicate to something. Uh, Maybe the Portuguese, from Porto to Santiago, I think would be that's listen to how I'm talking. It's only 150 miles,
Okay.
which is, which, yeah, I wouldn't mind doing another route. I don't know if I were going to do the Frances again, I think I'd just do a stage or two of it, probably.
Okay. So you will do it by sections.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Right now we have a customer that is gonna be doing that way, and he also wanted to explore everything that is around because Spain was part of the Roman Emporium 1,000 years
Yeah.
ago.
I, I, I wished I would have had, even though I had a rest day in Pamplona and one in Burgos and one in Leon. Um, you really could take more than that. I loved all the cities. I really loved Pamplona. I felt like you're racing around to try to get as much in as you can in a day. But I think a lovely trip for anyone would be to start somewhere along the way, Pamplona or wherever, and just tour the cathedrals. The cathedrals are worth the trip. They are unbelievable. They're in Pamplona, Burgos, Leon, Santiago. It's incredible.
Yes. And then something that captured your attention that you remember, probably a lot of things captured your attention while you were walking, but something that came to your mind right now that say, wow, this is a super experience.
I think one thing that I was reminded of is the kindness of strangers and the fact that you have to be open to it because you are relying every day on strangers. I, as I was leaving Pamplona early in the morning, for some reason I read my app wrong and I was weaving off the path, and an elderly man saw me and began speaking to me in rapid Spanish, and I only hablo español un poquito, and I was only catching about every 2 or 3 words. But he
Okay.
finally took me by the hand and walked me across the street, put me on the street, and pointed the direction that I should go. And this happens not that particularly, but the kindness of strangers when you get to the villages and the towns. I I underestimated how much you depend on people who you don't know. to really come alongside and help you, not just pilgrims, but the people in the community. And I hope the people that are walking the Caminos will respect the countryside and respect the community and respect the people, and appreciate what they're doing to help us all get from point A to point B. I fell in love with the Spanish people. I had nothing but good encounters with local people.
Yeah. So you know that I don't know if you were aware or not, but the Camino on 1980 was kind of abandoned.
Right.
And I met someone. This interview is not live yet, but it's gonna be prior to yours. And as a lady that she walked the Camino, when in 1986, and when she walked the Camino, she said that from Paris to Santiago, if she saw about 12 to 15 people,
Yes.
that's too much.
Hmm.
And right now it's totally different. And then also I was looking into some statistics that say that in 2021 there were about, I believe, about 8,000 pilgrims from the U.S. Last year were 40,000, close to 40,000 pilgrims that came from the U.S. to Spain, and it looks like this year is going to be more than that. And that is thanks to you were in Ocebreiro. Do you remember
Oh
when you
yes.
were in
Oh yes. I
Ocebreiro?
was there. Yes, I remember. That's where Father Elias is from. Correct.
Uh, yeah, that's correct. So he's the one that helped into recovering all that Camino on the 80s.
Right.
And he was not able to see all that because he passed about 1989, I believe. But that yellow arrow is because of him. And this lady that I was telling you, her name is Lori Dennett. So she helped also on communicating all the work that he did. And so, and the other day that this is the interview is live right now is the one from Mary Virtue. That's the one that we just published 3 days ago. That one, she mentioned that she was also, I believe, in 1990 something. And she said that she's from Canada. And she said that by that time when she walked, the only book available in English was the guy from Lori Dennett. So how amazing, and how you start seeing
Yeah.
people that have a lot of uncommon. So this is an experience, and this is what I like what we are doing here, because
Right.
we're trying to transmit joy to people, and this is about the podcast. So if you have seen our interviews that we do every week, we have someone different to talk, and the goal with this podcast is at some point be so much information of value for the pilgrims that they're going to
Yes.
be able to listen different opinions from different people.
Right.
So,
Right.
and now you are one more of them. So thank you
Oh,
for
I
all
don't know
that
about that,
opinion.
but I thoroughly enjoyed it and learned a lot of wonderful things.
Yes. Well, so one final advice for the pilgrims. What other thing would you say to them?
I would say prepare, don't over prepare. And there are so many ways to do it. As you know, I took the longer one, the one that's probably the most prevalent, the Frances, but there are other routes. But I think you would be wise to take a trip on the Camino, both physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. It helps you. Uh, the things you see, the people you talk to, the places you go will be things that will you'll remember a lifetime, and it's better than a vacation because it touches every aspect of your life, from physical, spiritual, mental, emotional. I really enjoyed it, and I can't recommend it enough.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Ron, for all that information that you have been providing to our pilgrims today. And for you, pilgrims, yeah, thank you for watching this new episode. And please keep adding your comments to the comment sections. That way we know what other topics would you like to see, and then we can invite someone else to talk about that. Thank you very much, and buen camino.
Camino.